In the east, we have the IPOB, championing restoration of Biafra. We have MASOB, championing the restoration of Biafra. In the southwest, we are seeing the movement for the creation of Oduduwa Republic and other Yoruba ethnic groups championing for the creation of the Oduduwa Republic and the Yoruba nation. In the middle belt, we have people who are also agitating a lot of injustices. We even hearing now that is now a movement for the creation of an Arewa Republic in northern Nigeria. We have the Lower Niger Congress, who believes that the 1999 constitution we are operating is a fraud. And here we are going to listen to Mr. Nnadi explain to us why he thinks that the 1999 constitution is a fraud that should be discarded and Nigeria go back to the drawing board. Mr. Nnadi, please, what do you think about this rise in ethnic nationalism in Nigeria and what it portends for Nigeria and Nigerians in general? You have the floor.
Thank you. Welcoming our viewers. All the agitations, so we can get it clear, all the agitations in Nigeria, whether they are Niger Delta People's Volunteer Force of Asari, or men that came after, or Niger Delta Avengers, what do you call the Niger Delta agitation? What is their complaint? It is their own constitutional grievance they are expressing in their own way. And what is that constitutional grievance? How did our oil and gas become the property of Maiduguri people and Kano people without reference to us? Why is it possible that Shell or Mobil or Chevron can come to our space and do just about whatever it likes? And that is just on that side. You come to the OPC. You remember that before Obasanjo came, OPC had enough weapons to push the police out of Yoruba streets. The police had to cover their uniforms to be able to move around. They wear their uniforms only when they got to their stations. That was how bad it was, because the Yoruba self-determination group called the OPC of the time was that they were asking, how did the internal security arrangements of Yoruba land become the exclusive business of people from distant lands who do not wish Yoruba particularly well? These questions you hear me repeat now were answers. These assertions about what they are fighting for, what they are fighting about, were answers I got from the leaders of those agitations in course of the many years of our trying to organize around the propositions we have made, organize people. For instance, in the Niger Delta one, I've had the privilege of asking people like Asari, say, Asari, why do you, that's Dokubo, why do you go get weapons? Why do you blow up a Shell facility? Why do you chase Ajib around? And he says, I do not know how Ijo land and the assets of Ijo land became the property of Northerners and their foreign friends. And so it is a constitutional grievance because it is the constitution that seized their assets, that seized the oil and gas assets of the Niger Delta and handed it over to whoever they gave the concessions. So as it is in their part, the one I was talking about, the Yoruba side, again, it was directly to Ghanaian Dams that I had to pose this question many years ago. Say, Ghani, what is it about this matter of going to get gun and chasing police all over the place? He said, how can Yoruba land leave its internal security arrangements to people to strangers who from all their actions and activities, you could see they do not wish us well. There's no reason why we can't police ourselves or defend our again, you see, it is the constitution in its exclusive list that puts the matter of arms and ammunition, the matter of police in the hands of the Abuja, in the hands of the federal government, exclusively in the hands of the federal government. And so whatever you had to do, you know, the people who are suffering from the failure of security in Yoruba land began to think of what they could do for themselves. Again, constitutional grievance being expressed in that manner of agitation. You come to the eastern side. I had the privilege again of asking Uwazurike, why do you go waving Biafra flag, say you want to, what is it about why is Nigeria no longer acceptable to you in the manner you are going about it? And he says, well, he cannot, tell how this claim, how at the point at which the Igbo submitted themselves into the Union of Nigeria to be managed in the manner that they are being managed. That people are being killed, people are being impoverished, assets are being taken, all again boiling down to constitutional grievance being expressed in that manner. What's that constitutional grievance? It is the constitution that defines Eastern Nigeria to be part of the Nigeria that has to be governed under that constitution that sees everybody's assets. So all this, ethnic agitations, you go to the Middle Belt, the same thing. You go to even the further north and the Sharia they eventually embarked upon. Some of us may think they are lunatics. No, I've had the privilege of asking them, the actual organizers of the commotion, why do you do this? As far as they are concerned, particularly in the Sharia north, they say, look, we were living our quiet life, and then Nigeria came to impose democracy on us. You remember
I think Tony's network is frozen, but his network is sound here. So I think, Tony, you are muted.
Right.
Thank you.
Again, you see, it is constitutional grievance being expressed in their own way. So they picked up arms and began to do all kinds of things. Their governments joined them. Their governments joined them in passing Sharia in 12 contiguous states. You remember, just for illustration, you remember, that these 12 states passed Sharia simultaneously in year 2000. And if we were to use another map to the one of the Biafra agitation and the Niger Delta agitation, they are all here. So we've put it all back together now to be called Lower Niger because of the difficulties and the manipulations of the British and their caliphate successors. And the one in blue here is Yoruba. And then the one in the middle, the one in purple, the Middle Belt, where killings are taking place across board. And the reason people are being killed in the Middle Belt today, and they're not able to defend themselves, is because of that same constitution that took up the guns from everybody else and puts in the hands of a federal government that has now been hijacked completely. And even before the hijack, the constitution we're talking about now, the way it emerged, it was an imposition by people from this green part, against the rest of the country. These people that have embraced Sharia were the same ones that imposed that constitution. And when you begin to think of, when you say ethnic nationalism, you see, we hear about Fulani headsmen. Is there any doubt as to who the headsman is? No, it's Fulani. And if you have Fulani headsmen killing people under the watch of Muhammadu Buhari Fulani, chief of Air Force, chief of police, chief of army, all of them of that stock. Maybe they are pushing back in their own way, but if other people who are suffering from either the seizure of assets, like the Niger Delta is complaining, or the compromise of internal security arrangement, like OPC, and Ghanaian dams were complaining, or the kind of brutalization we've seen, the kind of suppressions we have seen in the Igbo space since 1966, that became war in 1967, and then became complete emasculation since 1970. If you were in their shoes, if you are in any of these spaces and you see those things, look at the Middle Belt. Dangote is now reputed to be the richest man in Africa. Oh, he has cement factories run over the place. Remove concessions from all of his business. Remove those things that are taken forcefully from other people and handed to him. The limestone that is the chief raw material behind the cement that is being produced. How did he become the owner of the limestone that are deposited in the Middle Belt in the manner we have seen? How did he become the owner of the ports that were ceded to him, in the manner we have seen? You know what's going on in One in Port Harcourt. How did people who came from that distance become the ones who have to be given all of those things in those places? The economic assets of everybody have been sequestered by that constitution. Can you see the connection? The economic assets of everybody have been sequestered by the constitution that was imposed by this, minority that have now also embraced Sharia. And when you come to that constitution, let us begin from the end. We'll come back to the beginning of the constitution, but let us go to the end where you have the exclusive list. It is that on that exclusive list that you find the oil and gas of Niger Delta detained. It's on that exclusive list that you find the power to carry arms, the power to control police, the power to do all kinds of things to generate electricity. Nnewi is dead, Aba is dead, not because Igbo people do not realize they needed electricity. There was Oji River that was built by the government of Eastern Nigeria long before oil and gas came. It was the Oji River power plant that was fired on coal that was the basis for the electricity that drove a Trans-Nnadi industrial layout under Emma Okpara, who established it. It was the electricity from that place that drove the development of Aba, Onitsha, and Nnewi in what they became at the time. Eastern region was the example around the world for the growing economies of the time, ahead of the Asian tigers that came later. And therefore, if Eastern Nigeria realized that they needed electricity for development, and they built a power plant of that magnitude that was able to power all their needs, and then suddenly, it came to where somebody will write a constitution and impose that now remove the power of generating or transmitting electricity from the constituent, the federating units. That's what that constitution did. There's nobody that is going to be able to get any electricity beyond this 3,000 and 5,000 megawatts we're discussing for a country of 200 million people. Is it not lunacy? Whereas if you remove that item from that exclusive list, in 6 months, I was in the oil industry, so I can tell you authoritatively things about what you can do to generate electricity. If you remove that item from the exclusive list today, in 6 months, in 1 year, Lagos, for instance, that has 40 million people to worry about, will have no less than 50,000 megawatts of electricity. Nigeria is sharing 3,000 and 4,000 and 5,000 megawatts happily as at this moment. Everybody has to generate their own electricity. The only reason why electricity is not available is that it is sequestered by that constitution from those who have the capacity, the need, the know-how to generate it. And as it is with the electricity, so it is with the ports. Look at the ports. The same body of water that runs from Lagos, passes through Warri, Port Harcourt, goes all the way to Calabar. Any vessel coming from Europe or America, it doesn't add anything to your sailing time to bet in either Port Harcourt or in Warri or in Lagos. What is it that brought us to where all the vessels have to now go to Lagos with the congestion that has now ruined Apapa completely? Because ports are on the exclusive list. And those who want to choke Eastern Nigeria as part of the further punishment from losing the war diverted all the traffic to Lagos port. 80% of the imports, those who have to ship things into Nigeria, are from the eastern part. The vessels that bring their containers out to land in Lagos, and then the customs charge them for what they will charge, MPA will charge them for the containers come out of the port. It is like running a gauntlet. You know how it is with people with clubs on two sides of the road. You have to pass to get to where. That's how it is. Those containers will move through all kinds of toll gates every step of the way. They are paying every step of the way. By the time they get to Nnewi or wherever the importer lives, or Aba, you can imagine what might have happened. Whereas that same body of water that goes to Port Harcourt, the port in Port Harcourt could have been where somebody in Aba, 20 minutes, the container will be in his warehouse. Why must he have to come to Lagos? So you can see how this constitution is the crippling factor, is the manacle, is the shackle holding down development. The constitution that the security that has gone bad everywhere is simply on account of the fact that the constitution says you cannot touch gun. Only federal government can touch gun. Now the states have laws they make. How are you going to enforce the law? The judiciary have things they say in every part of the country, except somebody, but there's one police service that's accountable to one IG, who in turn is accountable to president. So no matter what you think, no matter what you do, it is only the kind of security they give you that you're going to get. Again, that constitution is the reason. Imagine, remember Anambra State, where this, the kidnapping that began with the governor being kidnapped from government house by a team led by a sitting assistant inspector general of police, Raphael Ige. Remember, in Oka, they came in there and grabbed him. The young people who are growing up in that era, you can imagine what could have been going on in their mind. How did it become possible for people to come here and go inside the government house and take our governor and put in the boot of a car, and the heavens did not fall because his security is on that exclusive list? And there are 68 items. There are 68 such items. Anything anybody is planning to do about Nigeria, those 68 items are the guarantee that those things will fail. Nigeria can only continue to plunge further and further downhill until it gets to the point of collapse. Electricity is not going to improve. Security is not going to improve. The infrastructure is not going to improve. Even the matter of electing who will govern you. Imagine what has happened in Imo. That people voted in an election. A governor, a result, a winner emerged. He was sworn in. He was already out working, and then some herdsmen sit in Abuja in the name of Supreme Court and announced that the man who came forth in the election is now the one to be governor, and actually removed the one that won the election by a clear margin and invested the one that is their choice as governor. And it's only on account of the fact that the matter of election for federal and state, that's federal and state elections, are on that exclusive list. So as we are, the people who are suffering from all this brigandage, all they are seeing is that you think it's by accident that the kind of lunatics that have gone to Senate and who have been governors across the East, all this will happen. No, it's because the Constitution domiciles the management of elections in the hands of strangers in the name of INEC. If it were people in Igbo land that had to process, like all other federations, if it were people in Igbo land that had to process the candidates who will contest elections and govern Igbo land, maybe as governor or House of Assembly members or going to Senate, the characters we've seen since 1999, do you think any one of them will go to buy form to contest election? They will not, because they won't even get to the primaries. There are people who are going to say, hey, not you. But because Nigeria is structured the way it is, because of that exclusive list on that constitution, the matter of federal and state elections are exclusively in the hands of INEC that is sitting in Abuja. So if they want only criminals to be your governors, like we have seen in the East, if they want only lunatics to be your senators, like we have seen elsewhere around the country, it is who they process. The other ones will be disqualified in some way. Something will be done to make sure they do not get to, because it is not the people of the territory that are organizing their own election, and we claim to be in a federation. And in a federation, all these I'm talking about are the opposite what a federation should be. Now that's the end point. And the part of what we can do with this time is to establish very clearly that all of the agitations, all of the things tumbling and hitting at the foundation of Nigeria are flowing from things written in black and white and imposed by brigandage. How do I mean? By the time the British were, getting ready to leave in 1960, they had the regions they had governed, the East, the West, and the Northern region of the time, get into some kind of meeting, some kind of discussion, because they had governed them almost like separate countries. Nobody knew what they were doing, particularly in the other place. But they could have been merged 3 independent countries if the discussions had gone that way. But for some reason, the British wanted them to remain in one union, and the basis of remaining in that one union. You remember how in 1953 Enohoro moved motion for independence, and that motion was, opposed and defeated by the Northern delegation. They said they were not ready for independence, that their people were so backward that if they were to go into independence at that point, that they would move from external colonialism of the British to internal colonialism of the southern part of the country, who had acquired the education and had become the replacement for all the offices the British colonial officers would be leaving behind. And so Ahmadu Bello made a demand. I want us to pay attention to this, because that is the crux of the entire matter. At that point, the argument was, well, if you want us to be part of this region, if you want us to be part of this independence, part of this political union, that is Northern region now talking, that we must have a certain level of autonomy, a certain degree of autonomy that will leave us entirely, mostly, moving at our own pace, so that nobody comes to dictate to us from the other parts. There were 8 points of demand from the point that motion for independence was defeated by the Northern delegation. There were 8 points of demand made by Ahmadu Bello, the premier of Northern region of the time. And those 8 points eventually defined, because it took from that 53 to the 60, to 1960, when independence was eventually achieved, it took those 7 years to be able to adjust, make all the adjustments that provided that level of autonomy defined by those 8 points. What will happen to the armed forces? What will happen to resources in terms of what are we bringing? What are we taking away? All the things that became the definition of the kind of federalism, the kind of federation they were willing to enter. These were now concluded in the Lancaster House meetings, in which the regions had made their constitutions. Remember, it was in 1957 that the Western region had their constitution, and they were granted internal governance status. They began to manage their own affairs. Then in the following, immediately after the East concluded its own, they were granted. It was the North came in 1959 with their own constitution. And then they began to manage their own affairs. These three different, like Germany and France and Portugal, discussing whether to form European Union. That was the kind of, that was the level of autonomy that defined the political union called Nigeria that became independent in 1960. And so much was that autonomy that the regions, your assets belonged to you. That was what was agreed. And you contributed only 15% of your income to the center for upkeep and the servicing of the limited functions jointly assigned by the regions to the center. So the federal government was the creation of the regions as a union office, but it was the regions that contributed the money, working their assets. Therefore, Awolowo could do all of what he did in Western region, using the proceeds from cocoa and other, resources of the Western region, prioritizing education as he did, some of the other people who had other things were also, you know, the palm, there was palm produce in the east. The north struggled and had to put in place their groundnut, you know, based you know, economy. And that was the kind of, so whatever Awolowo would do with his cocoa, whether it was education or something else, the one in the east, Emma would do from his palm produce and other resources. The port in Port Harcourt was property of Eastern region at the time. And then in the north, Ahmadu Bello and whatever they found to do, but they were all contributing to the center. Eventually, oil was found at the time it was found, and things began to shift until it was now truncated in 1966. From that point on, the center, the federation collapsed at the point of the coup in 66. And the 5 constitutions that defined the Federation of Nigeria, you know, gave way. Of course, the 4th region came in 1963 when by plebiscite, the Midwestern region was carved out of Western region. So there were now 4 regions, each of them with their constitutions, and then the central government, the federal government with its own, the federation, the constitution of the federation. So there were 5 constitutions that defined the Federation of Nigeria. A federation is a union of constitutions. And therefore, from the point in 1966 that those 5 constitutions got toppled, Nigeria ceased to be a federation. And progressively, it you know, declined into the unitarism we see up to this date. And it was in that forceful acquisition, forceful hijack of the federation by the federal government that emerged, the federal government in quote, because you cannot have a federal government without a federation. If you call yourself federal government and the federating constitutions are in distress or toppled, you are deceiving yourself. Nigeria has been a unitary state since that time. And all of what we are struggling to deal with today arise from that singular factor, that Nigeria became a unitary state in which the federal government now owned the assets of all the federating units, the oil and gas assets of the Niger Delta, the port of Lagos, the limestone of Middleburg, and all kinds of other things, and the powers to work those assets, including electricity generation and transmission, security, election, 68 items. You have an impossible situation, and if nothing is done, to address the situation, the union is gone. That I can assure you, because those agitations I happen to have been sufficiently involved in managing it so it doesn't become anarchy. We called all of those people who were doing those agitations to say, why not let us go to a meeting? Let us forget what the British did. We knew they did all kinds of things wrong. Let us forget the ones the soldiers did. And we called a meeting of the owners of Nigeria, the indigenous nationalities of Nigeria, to a sovereign meeting. And that was what came out as PRONACO in 2005, because by 1999, the constitution that emerged from the truncation of our federation since 1966, the constitution that emerged in 1979, which was now what I would call inverted federalism. The 4 regions have been broken down into 12 states by Gowon. Some of the revisionists of history want to say it is Ironsi. No, what Ironsi did by the Unification Decree number 34 of 1966 was to try to form a government of sorts, because the federal government had been decapitated, the regional government had been decapitated by the soldiers that staged the coup. So there was no government. And since he was the most senior officer, it fell on him, head of the army, it fell on him to stabilize the polity. And decree number 34 was merely to be able to, he had to appoint military governors in place of the premiers that had been either killed or toppled. And it was between those military governors of the 4 regions and himself, as head of state, that you had the Supreme Military Council. That's Ironsi. Of course, the heads of the armed the service chiefs, more or less. That was what became the government of the time. It was an interim measure to restabilize the society and the polity. Now, things began to fall apart for the federation itself. It also did not touch the structure of the federation. It was decree number 14 of 1967 by Yakubu Gowon, which broke down the regions, the 4 regions into 12 states, that tampered with the structure of the federation for the first time. And it was from that point of tampering with the structure of the federation that the assets that previously belonged, that up to that point belonged to the regions, progressively got, hijacked by the center. And as I speak with you, more and more were taken. Initially, it was just the oil and gas assets of the East that were that was targeted. But progressively, all the things we now find on that exclusive list, all the solid minerals, all the right to generate electricity, all the right to transmit, all the rights to police ourselves, everything that was the function of the region was taken over by the federal government. And the states are now like beggars at the feet of an omnipotent federal government, forbidden by the Constitution from doing any of the things on those exclusive lists. And so we are like now trapped in a cage in which an illicit federal government, I call it illicit because you cannot pretend you are federal government when the constitutions that define the federation are not in place. And therefore you are the owner of, it's just like a company. Imagine a company and its shareholders. The memo and articles is the exclusive business of the shareholders. In fact, they are coming together. They are coming together to form a company. Is one in which they are saying, we submit our assets. We have agreed amongst ourselves. We submit our assets now to be called XYZ Limited. 4 people may gather and they form XYZ Limited. Now, the documents that define, that bring them together to become company is called the memorandum. There's a second document called articles that define their relationships as owners of XYZ Limited. There are 2 different documents. The same way, the constitution of a country that starts with the people of so place having firmly and solemnly resolved to live in unity as one indivisible country. That's the memo. Do hereby give unto ourselves the following constitution. That's the article. And so, when you begin to ask who does the memo and articles of a company, is it the owners of the company or the management they hired to run their company that does memo and article for them? Certainly the owners of the company are the ones with the exclusive right to make their memo, because that's how they form their company, and write their articles. That's how they share their the obligations and the benefits. Now, what happened to Nigeria in 1966 was that the management hired by the owners of the enterprise. The owners of the enterprise, to make it clearer to our people, the Yoruba that could be a country of 55 million people, look at this map. The owners of the enterprise Nigeria, so that we can go back to that preamble to begin to imagine the weight of the lie under which we have lived and which is about to consume the Union of Nigeria. The shareholders in the enterprise called Nigeria are the constituent components. Those are the ones like the Yoruba, as you see in blue here. Those are the ones saying that we the Yoruba, we the Ijo, we the Igbo, we the Ogoni, we the Tiv, we the Juku, we the Fulani, having firmly and solemnly resolved to live together, do hereby, you understand? Because that resolution means we have decided to submit our lands and our people into this union to be called Nigeria. And therefore, we have also decided to govern our relationship with all the other people in these articles we now make, called the Constitution. That claim that is at the preamble of our Constitution, that we the people have solemnly resolved If you want to understand the gravity of what is wrong with it, for every provision you see in the Constitution, for instance, the one that makes the oil and gas assets of Nigeria the property of the federal government and Kano people to the exclusion of Ijaw people. If you read that preamble, if you read the first two sentences of that preamble into every provision, for instance, saying, imagine the Ijaw saying that we the Ijaw, having discussed with all the other people, do hereby agree that our oil and gas assets should now belong to Nigeria and the Kano people. That is what it will read like. Oh, that we the Imo people, having looked at everything, we agree that we will no longer have the right to elect who will govern us. Whoever they give to us will be fine with it. That's what it actually means. Every provision in the Constitution, read that preamble to it. Let it come out from the mouth of those who are supposed to be said, because every section of the Constitution is supposed to be proceeding from your mouth, my mouth. That's why they say the Constitution is a living document. Every day that Constitution is alive, every provision of it is supposed to be proceeding from the mouth of those who are held together in that union and who are governed by those provisions, which is why it was decided from the time immemorial that those who have to make that Constitution are the ones whose sovereignty, are put together in that union. Our sovereignty, there's countries, people that could have been countries of their own. The people that could have been countries of their own are the ones being alleged to have submitted their lands and their people into the union on the terms contained inside that Constitution. And let me tell you some of the other terms so you can see how things got muddled up. Assets and right to work assets and defend ourselves and guns, everything have been taken in that exclusive list. But the worst part is that since we did not hold any meeting to decide whether we want to be in a union or not, it was just by decree that Absalom Abubakar in 1999 claimed, decree number 24, that we the people have agreed to be in this union. And we're saying, no, we never got called to a meeting. Unfortunately for him and his confederates, I have a copy of that Constitution here now. Unfortunately for Absalom Abubakar and all of those who are hoping they're going to keep this union by brigandage, the decree number 24, by which the Constitution is enacted, has in black and white the story of how the Constitution came. He said he formed the Constitution debating committee that went around and came back to Supreme Military Council, and therefore the report as submitted, which was basically a recommendation that we go back to 1979 Constitution, and the Armed Forces Ruling Council have reviewed it, and therefore passing it into law to be called the 1999 Constitution. That is what is in black and white here. If you go out tomorrow morning to buy a copy of the Constitution, this is what you will see in that decree number 24. But there is something Providence did to solve this problem for us ahead of time. There is an instruction in subsection 3, because that decree number 24 is just a 2-page thing. It starts here and it ends here. Now, in subsection 3, it says, whenever it may hereafter be necessary for the Constitution to be printed, it shall be lawful for the federal government printer to omit all parts of this decree apart from the schedule, and the Constitution as so printed shall have the force of law, notwithstanding the omission. The authors of this calamity, this Constitution, did not want those who will suffer under it to ever know how it came, so that the claim that we the people made it will stand unchallenged forever. That was why they gave this instruction that this story of how the Constitution came should not be printed along. It was in error, and that is what is about to save this catastrophe we have seen. It was in error that this got printed along with the schedule. The schedule, you can see the schedule starts from here. Can you see schedule? Now, it is this decree number 24 that counters and defeats the claim that we the people made this Constitution. And that was what we took to court in 2007, because when they discovered their error, at the time we were already mobilizing on what to do to defeat the constitution, they printed a second version. As I speak with you, there are two versions of the 1999 constitution in circulation. The version in which this version here was what all the embassies got as the constitution of Nigeria from 1999. But the second version was now where they were trying to remove this proof of the fact that we did not make the constitution, because this is the proof. In going to court, we took the two versions before the court to say, look at the story of the authors of this document and tell us between we and Absalom Abubakar who made this constitution. And that we is between we, the Yoruba, we, the Ijaw, all of us as represented in that suit in 2007. And that was after we had called a meeting of all, the PRONACO, between 2005 and 2006, of all the ethnic nationalities, so that we can agree afresh. Forget about the British, forget about the military. Let us, now we are here, let us, in our right, within our sovereign rights to decide, and within our right to self-determination, as already enunciated by the let us agree on whether we want to carry on as a union, and if yes, on what terms. There were 164 ethnic delegations that attended that national that sovereign conference as ethnic nationalities. Ijaw came as Ijaw, Ogoni came as Ogoni, Igbo came as Igbo, Idoma came as Idoma, and we had even the Fulani. Buhari was part of the Fulani delegation that came to that meeting. Syed Abubakar, that is the Sultan in Sokoto now, he was in the army at the time, he was part of the Fulani delegation that came. And we all agreed on what we could begin to do to save, to salvage, to take Nigeria back to being a federation, so that all those rights and assets of the regions that have been sequestered by the center and been mismanaged. Nigeria has become a criminal enterprise under this forgery of an instrument. This is the title deed under which Nigeria is selling 3 million barrels of crude oil every day. This is the title deed under which Nigeria can go to any part of the country and kill people, with our signature forged on top of it, because that we the people means that we have agreed, whereas we never met. So we went to court to say we never met, and therefore to say it is our doing, to say it is by consensus that we have this instrument, that it amounts to forgery, and this cannot remain the basis of the union. But you see, we're not anarchists, and so having first agreed on what will replace what we do not want. Because if we went headlong to tackle this and take it down, we probably will land in anarchy because of how offended people had been at what Nigeria was doing to them. All of those armed groups, we persuaded them at the time to come to that conference. Asari Dokuba and his Niger Delta People's Volunteer Force, OPC, Gani Adams, all armed. Uwazirika and his mass of followers, multitude that will overrun anybody anytime. We persuaded them to come to that meeting, and they did come. And most people wanted us to continue as a union, but on the condition that we return to being a federation, so that they can take back their rights and their assets to begin to repair what Nigeria had done in damage to them. And from that point in 2007, we went to that court. Of course, they had no answer. The Attorney General of the Federation of Nigeria responded. I was the one who had to file the suit on behalf of the plaintiffs, which included, in terms of the plaintiffs, Enohoro, that's Chief Anthony Enohoro, Wole Soyinka, Odumegwu Ojukwu, who had been in a war on that same discussion of how do we live together, Chief Sisi Ono, Bishop Bonigi of Akure, Fred Agbegbe, Yerima Shetima, the same one that issued the quit notice. He was a product of this process. And here is in Owerri now begging our good friend Wazirike for the quit notice that they gave in their recklessness. Now, he was a plaintiff in that suit, meaning that he was a part of this whole process of how do we live together. The Asari and the Wazirike were detained by Obasanjo at the time on charges of treason. Again, they were plaintiffs along with these other people. We had 10 of them. It was that suit that collapsed their treason trial in 2007. Keyamo was their lawyer of the time, but when we were ready to go with the suit, after we had put everything in place, we got them to sign up to it, and that was how their treason trial collapsed in court, because we asked Nigeria to show us the instrument, the constitution under which they were charging people for treason, for resisting what they were doing in their spaces. We told those who were running Nigeria at the time that anybody they would bring to court for doing anything in resistance to the impositions of Nigeria in their own space, whether it is Niger Delta that want their oil and gas assets back to their hands, or it is the OPC that want the internal security arrangements of Yoruba back in their hands. Today we have a Motekum. You can see how progressively the matter had degenerated. It is now going to armed self-defense. I'm sure you had people now calling others to go and get guns to defend themselves. Is that the way we should have gone with all the efforts we've made? So Nigeria has become a torment. Nigeria has become such a toxic liability to the constituents. And those who imposed that constitution, and when I say imposed, it did not start in it didn't even start in 1999. The 1979 constitution that was adopted in 1999 by this decree came from the coup of July 66. It was Murtala Mohammed that led that coup. All of the things that became war happened. And by 1975, he now removed the Gowon, who emerged head of state in 66 and became the head of state. The first assignment Murtala Mohammed gave out as head of state in 1975 was to invite Rotimi Williams to come and craft for him what will become the victory charter from that war. I want our people to listen carefully. It was that entire thing they got by brigandage, by decree between 1966 and 1975 that they gave out as instruction to be written into constitution, meaning that they were now the owners of everybody and everything. Rotimi Williams went out in search of who will do that work with him because he had a blank check. Look, go and do it and you get paid whatever you bring as your invoice. He ended up with one university teacher called Ben Wabeze, University of Lagos, who was an expert in that area of what they call legal drafting. And between them, they raised a draft. It was the draft they raised for Murtala Mohammed that became the instruction material, the working document for 1977 Constituent Assembly. Murtala Mohammed had been killed in a coup in 1976, and Obasanjo, who stepped in, had that draft, and therefore constituted the Constituent Assembly of 77. The Constituent Assembly, for those who will say, oh, 79 Constitution was better because there was Constituent Assembly. The Constituent Assembly had all kinds of adjustments they made into that draft. The Constituent Assembly did not accept the retention of the states created by brigandage from 1967. They wanted a return to the region so that the autonomies could come back to them. The Constituent Assembly did not accept presidential system because power will accumulate the way we have seen it accumulate now in the hands of a few people. So many things. The Land Use Act, that was Land Use Decree at the time, the Constituent Assembly, it wasn't the decision of the Constituent Assembly to put the Land Use Decree into Constitution. We've not been able to amend it to date. And that was the mechanism by which the oligarchy that has seized power by military fiat to more or less hijack the assets, the lands of everybody in Nigeria. They put it in that constitution. And what I'm building up to is that the Constituent Assembly of 1977 did not approve of any of all those things. The NYSC decree of 1973, which was on the front end, they say, oh, we've been in a war. Let our young people go mix up so that they can be happy together forever. Instead of going to address the issues that led to the war, they removed the teaching of history and began to get young people to go mix up. But that's the front end. The back end, which again found its way to the constitution eventually, was that the NYSC decree was a mechanism of this Sharia territory to send the children of Sokoto and Kano and Maiduguri to Port Harcourt and Lagos and Warri to be absorbed in NNPC in MPA, in Central Bank, in Chevron, whereas the children of Port Harcourt, the children of Enugu, the children of Lagos are sent to Karanamoda, Biu, Pangsing to go and perish in rural places. It's been going on since 1973, and 90% of the bureaucracy of Nigeria today is made up of people recruited through that dubious process. And you can see that to date, it's still ongoing, that people from these parts are sent to go and perish. If Boko Haram doesn't kill them, you remember the copper in Bauchi that was killed by the pupils because she was wearing trousers, her own pupils, who are Sharia extremists. I'm sure you remember all the other incidents. If Boko Haram does not kill them, they are never kept. They are taken into rural areas to go and teach in school. There's no prospect of finding any employment whatsoever. But the children from these other parts are sent into all the places where there's standing instruction to retain them. Now they put that too in the Constitution. Nobody has been able to amend it. So between the Land Use Act and that NYSC Act and all the other terrible provisions of that Constitution, that's how we got to where we are. A society that is built upside down. And people are expecting that anything will ever come out of that Nigeria. That Nigeria has become a torment to more than 75% of the people you call Nigerians. They are prepared to give anything to get out of it. Nigeria has become a fraud against them because it says they've submitted themselves into a union they didn't submit themselves to. And now you look at the number of young people, especially from eastern Nigeria, from southern Nigeria and particularly eastern Nigeria, that try to escape the misery that Nigeria has become for them. They are prepared to trek across the Sahara Desert. They die there. The ones that get to Mediterranean Sea never make it into Europe. Go to China. Go to every part of the world where the young people who have been charged out of their ancestral homes are scavenging for a living. They are being killed everywhere. And so these agitations, so that people can understand it, these agitations are from those who realize that unless they recover their sovereignty, that the Nigeria that is in place now is not the Nigeria our fathers negotiated. The Federation of Nigeria that our fathers negotiated in Lancaster House died in 1966, in July 1966. The dummy that emerged, the one they call One Nigeria, from 1967, the Nigeria of imposition, because the federal Nigeria was a Nigeria of consensus, a Nigeria of agreement. The one that emerged by conquest, by beating down of people, by sequestration of assets. That the matter will go to a referendum. There's nothing anybody can do about it. Initially, let me tell you what has changed. Let me tell you why we can say it with absolute confidence. And if anybody wants to make it a rifle show, well, everybody's waiting. In 1967, this is the map of Nigeria. The white portion you see here was the Biafra of 1997 because they created the 12 states that now turned Eastern Nigeria into 3 units of East Central states, which is now the 5 Southeast states of today. The 5 Igbo states today are in this white patch. That was the East Central state of the time. Now they cut out what they call river states, and the debate on the terms of the union, the insistence by Eastern Nigeria that we go back to being a federation, that was what they went to discuss in Aburi. They agreed among themselves, they came back, one part abandoned that agreement because they had guns in their hands, and they killed 3.5 million people from this small part. And got the rest of the country to work with them, deceiving everybody with one thing or the other. And this was the formation in which that war was fought. Progressively, when those things that happened to Eastern Nigeria began to happen to other people, Abiola won elections, Yoruba man, and instead of being allowed to govern, he was put in prison and killed. And Yoruba came to the conclusion that if after all these years of alliance with these people, one of us cannot be president, then we're leaving the union. Gradually, the Ogoni say, oh, our assets, why are you holding on to it? It became agitation. Kensarowa was hung. Then things went on and on. So what happened to the Igbo had happened to the Yoruba, had happened to the Ogoni, began to happen to the Ijo. You saw what happened to Odi, you saw what happened to Kerekoko, you saw what happened to Obakiri. They were being wiped out because they were saying, oh, our oil and gas. Whereas it was, oh, let's go and beat down the Igbo. That became the basis of seizing those assets at the time. So gradually, everybody's assets got seized by that omnipotent federal government. And in response, the initiative we launched was to go and gather all their grief and explain to them what needed to change, to bring life back to them, to bring back their sovereignty to them, to restore the ownership of their lands and their assets to them. And what we have today is this, that small white part has found an alliance of all the other people who are being killed, whether they were in Yoruba land or they were in Middle Belt, by these same people who have now gone to embrace Sharia, that impose the duty of faith on them to kill the rest of the people as infidels. So all of us in this white part, in the alliance of the Lower Niger, the Yoruba and the Middle Belt, all of us are now rejecting this constitution as basis of the union. And we're not just talking to the air. We had a process by which people were organized to go and work out their constitutions. I'm sure you saw the one of Yoruba land. We went to solemn assemblies to announce to the world that we have done everything democratically possible to resolve this matter, but the people who impose Sharia, under which they owe it a duty of faith to kill us, and the people who embrace the feudalist worldview, in which they say all men are not born equal, therefore they are born to rule the rest of the people and own their assets. Now they've gone even beyond that to launching an ethnic cleansing campaign against the rest of the country, inviting the Fulani from all over the world, all over Africa, to come to join them. You saw the governor in Bauchi the other time talking about Fulani from everywhere belonging to Nigeria. You saw Buhari opening our borders for them to pour in. And you've seen the kind of, onslaught they've been executing. And you saw the federal government that has exclusive control of arms and the armed services. You saw what they've done with all the killings going on. Buhari was the one at the time the Boko Haram, Jonathan wanted to have a meeting with Boko Haram. You remember, it was Buhari that they nominated as their spokesman in the meeting that would have happened in Saudi Arabia. However, he came to that position. Why was it not me nominated? It was Buhari. It was the same Buhari that was talking about at the time Hejirika was struggling with them. Buhari says, oh, an attack on Boko Haram is an attack on the North. How am I to interpret that? Buhari was he's been a grand patron of Miyetti Allah. From the point in 2014 that Boko Haram, which they all had a hand in how it was formed, Boko Haram, you remember in 2014, went into an open alliance with the ISIS. You remember, and they became ISWAP. And together they pushed so much that Jonathan had to leave office. Not because they want him in any election, but they were threatening violence on such a scale. Immediately Buhari was sworn in. You saw that joint venture of ISIS and Boko Haram became Fulani herdsmen that began to sack communities after communities and replacing them with Fulani from Mali and Senegal and everywhere they came from. Further down the road, the same Miyetti Allah that was the owner of the cows that were supposed to be headed by these Fulani herdsmen that are now killing people, Miyetti Allah began to take responsibility for the killings, boasting for the killings of the Fulani herdsmen. At a time there's a Fulani president. The governor in Benue went to Abuja because the constitution forbids him from having arms or deploying arms. He went to tell the commander-in-chief of the Federal Republic of Nigeria that strangers were coming into his domain and killing people on a large scale. Buhari said to him, "Oh no, go back home. That's what. Go back home and learn how to live in peace with Fulani of Benue." That was the answer of your president to a governor under distress. Then the defense minister of the time turns around to say, "Oh, you see, all of you who built on ancient grazing roads, you better go and remove your development so that cows can pass freely." The Inspector General of Police turns around to say, "Oh, all of you who pass anti-open grazing bills into law and enforcing it, you are the cause of the problem. You better go and repeal those laws. Otherwise, you have to contend with the herdsmen by yourself." Inspector General of Police in a federation in which only the federal government had exclusive control over all arms. People were being killed in such large numbers. Then we saw El Rufai, governor in Kaduna, telling us that he went to 14 different countries to give money to people who were coming from outside to kill people in southern Kaduna. That was his answer. As I speak with you, from the time in 2015 when these killings began, not one person had been arrested by the armed forces of Nigeria or the federal government of Nigeria or the state government of Kaduna, where most of the killings have been taking place. When you put it all together, you will see that they are not only looking away, they are actually facilitating and colluding, like General Danjuma did allege. Looking at where Danjuma was coming from, you think he was joking in that kind of allegation? And if anybody was in doubt about the collusion, at the time COVID-19 lockdown came, movements were restricted completely. But in that same period, the Fulani that are poured in from everywhere on the invitation of their kinsman who is present here were being moved into the south in scores and scores of trucks every night. Whoever imposed that lockdown, whoever was enforcing it against everybody else, will have to be the one to explain to us how that large number of Fulani found their ways from wherever they were bringing them from into the southern territories. And so, if anybody was in doubt, that was proof of collusion between the federal government and these invaders. And of course, it came to where we had to go to raise alarm in the US, to people who were at war with ISIS, to tell them that the ISIS you are at war with have been invited by the government of our country in the Boko Haram they were doing before, that joined the forces with the ISIS in 2014, and together they are doing business. If you are still at war with them, you better come now, because they want to take over the entire place here. And when they reinforce themselves in the manner they can, let me show you.
Here. Okay.
Right. Yeah. Now, we're switching power every step of the way. Now, this is West Africa. This is West Africa. You see Nigeria somewhere. Here's Nigeria, and here's the Sharia belt in that Nigeria. All of this red big circle is the territory being targeted by ISIS in West Africa. What you see happening in Nigeria is that they are trying to sweep their way, ethnic cleansing. They are killing the owners of all these places, bringing Fulani from all over this place to plant in this Nigeria, the balance of Nigeria here, so that the Fulani of Africa will have a homeland for the first time. And ISIS will have an operational base with the resources of Nigeria, including the military resources, including the process of 3 million barrels of oil and gas a day. They will have the means to declare their Islamic Caliphate, the type they tried to do in with Syria and Iraq. That's what ISIS is here in joint venture with the Fulani that want homeland for themselves. So the federal government of Nigeria, presided over by Fulani elements, are actually in that joint venture to resettle the Fulani from everywhere in Nigeria and to hand over the territory of Nigeria to ISIS for their global operations. That was what we went to show the US how it was happening throughout last year. Luckily, they had the presence of mind to listen. They interrogated it for 7 months, and they came to the decision that the situation called for something they have to do in their national security interest. And that was how we came about the executive order signed on June the 2nd. In that executive order, you saw that Trump says this is national security imperative and that it will have priority whatever else they are doing in their foreign policy. So we've come to where the only way to keep the Nigerian Union is for the constituents to be ready to be killed to the last person. If we do not want to be killed, then we have to give up that dummy called one Nigeria, the Nigeria of imposition, the Nigeria of brigandage, the Nigeria of bloodletting, the Nigeria of master and servant. No different, in fact, it's worse than apartheid. In apartheid South Africa, you were at least sure that the Boers they were developing systems. Yes, the blacks were excluded, but what system has the Fulani developed here, other than denigrating and destroying what was in place? And so we say Nigeria has become a fraud to the extent that it is defined by this constitution and not the constitutions by which we federated. Nigeria has become a toxic liability and not an asset for those who are trapped here against their will. And if after 53 years of waiting, from the time, it's not even 53 years anymore, from 1967 to date, from after their Buri meetings, if we have not found the discipline to going back to becoming, to being a federation one more time, I think it's an option for those who are trapped here to exercise their right to self-determination. Unfortunately, for those who are trying to hold Nigeria by brigandage, by force, the UN instrument on this situation, because this constitution was done in negation of our right to self-determination. And if you thought I was making conjectures, I will take you to section 14, subsection 2A. Just listen to it so you can understand the basic. Sovereignty belongs to the people of Nigeria. That belong to the Ijaw, belong to the Ogoni, belong to the Tiv, belong to the nationalities, from whom government, through this constitution, derives all its powers and authority. And so it is in the pretense that the people had exercised that sovereignty and had made a constitution that they wrote the falsehood into the preamble that says we the people have solemnly agreed. But unfortunately for them, they leave evidence of the fact that we never met, how much more agreeing. And it is a combination of all of this that has given rise to the process, the campaign by those who are trapped here to restore their sovereignty to themselves. Are we still there?
We are here. We are listening to you.
Right. So that's really where we are. The UN instrument that define what will happen, the United Nations Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous Peoples, 2007, I have a copy of it here, entitles the indigenous nationalities trapped here to their right to self-determination, and is inalienable. And what we have done is organize them in the formations they can very easily exercise that right. And no matter what anybody thinks or says at this time, until the matter gets to referendum, this constitution will have to go down first. There's no debate about that. Nobody has to be persuaded about the forgery that this is, in terms of the fact that we have rejected it across board by Solomon assemblies in Port Harcourt, in Ibadan, and in Makurdi between 2015, that was Port Harcourt, 2017, that was Ibadan, and then 2018, that was Makurdi. We have the owners of Nigeria, the indigenous nationalities of Nigeria, who are now under the threat of extermination, empowered by the constitution they did not make, by a group that pretends that we are still in the union we agreed. They are saying that that union is no longer, that union as defined by this constitution is no longer acceptable to them, and they're going to act together to take down this constitution and bring us to where we have to go to referendum to decide what will happen next. That's what this constitutional force majeure that people have been hearing about is all about. It should have happened before the lockdown, but we lost 5 months. But right now, things have been put back on schedule, and the owners of Nigeria are going to work together, are going to march out together, rejecting this basis of this fraudulent basis of the union that is not only that has not only seized their assets, but is now about to take all their lives. Because as long as this constitution is in place, that federal government that have been hijacked by the Fulani is in a position to kill off everybody and take all their assets, having first entitled themselves to access everywhere under this constitution. You can see the kind of laws that they are passing in the National Assembly that they've seized again. You are talking about the Company and Allied Matters Act in the manner that will enable you go to squeeze out the church from here. You are talking about a waterway bill in which all the waters, all the bodies of water, the land to the left and right of all the bodies of water, will belong to the federal government. Who are they talking to? And those people from southern and middle belt Nigeria sitting with them in Abuja, you are going to hear us loud and clear. We are going to hold you responsible for all of what is done in that place while you are there. We do not care how you voted. If you want to be on the side of the people being killed, on the side of your people being killed, you must come home now. You must step out of that place and not have your name on the process that led to these laws that are being made now. We are saying that our lives are being distressed by the constitution that was imposed. You are prepared to swear to defend and uphold that constitution, and you say you are representing the people that are being killed in Middle Belt, whose assets have been detained in Niger Delta, or the ones who are saying they no longer want to be in the union in Yoruba land. You are there on their behalf, and you are prepared to swear and defend this constitution. Some people are even talking about elections in 2023 under this constitution, including the ones in eastern Nigeria. We are saying to you all, you have to make a choice to be with the enemy that is using this constitution to kill your people, or to come home and be on the side of your people and refuse to do any further business under this constitution. If you think you have become stronger than all of us because there are people in Sokoto and Kano encouraging you, we can only wish you good luck. But you have to take personal responsibility for your roles in sustaining this instrument of death, instrument of attrition, instrument of backwardness. We've not even talked about quota system and all of what it brought on us.
We thank you, Mr. Nnadi. You are the only guest on my platform that I've allowed to speak without interruption for more than 30 minutes. And
thank you.
It is with I know this is a very passionate subject for you. If we allow
people are being killed, people are being killed. That's the problem.
If we allow you,
and there's nothing inside to save them.
If we allow you to continue on this, we may stay here the whole day. We thank you very much for this passionate discourse. It's been enlightening. We normally allow time for questions at this point, but we have spent so much time listening to you. But let me just have a few clarifications and see. We'll just take a few questions Our program normally runs for only 60 minutes. We have now been here for like 82 minutes. So let's just take a few questions. First, I would like to ask.
Right. Yeah.
Now, what is the, please, we'll take the questions and answers very, very briefly, please. Not more than 30 seconds, and the answer not more than 1 minute. Tony,
Right.
now we have seen the problem we are in now. You have talked of the
Yes.
force majeure.
Yes.
How do you intend to achieve what you have planned to do, a referendum, and this force majeure we talked about? Can you explain?
On the 11th of December in 2018, these three blocks in the alliance, the Lower Niger, the Yoruba, and the Middle Belt, came out to say that they have gone through all the democratic processes of repudiating that constitution, and therefore that they will not tolerate any further elections under that constitution. The constitutional force majeure is the mechanism by which that decision will be enforced. They are going to come out to tell the whole world that the Union of Nigeria, as defined by the Constitution of '99, has become distressed, that the social contracts by which we entered into a political union have been frustrated by those who imposed Sharia and who are now killing other people off in order to take their lands permanently. And therefore, that they will have to advance into their self-determination initiatives that have been long in building. Yoruba already have their constitution. You saw them go to UN the other day. You saw them rolling out their Motekun. In the eastern part, things are going on. In the middle belt, things are going on. These three will come out, will come together. The constitutional force majeure is to declare an emergency, that this constitution can no longer be the basis of the union. From the time that declaration is made, of course, a time frame will be announced, within which certain things must begin to happen. If those things are not happening, those who are facing the threat of extermination are going to advance their rights, the journey to exercising their right to self-determination, because that their right to self-determination under this UN instrument does not depend on anybody agreeing with them. You only need to be a nationality on your ancestral space. If you are Ijo on Ijo land, Ogoni on Ogoni land, nobody, your right to self-determination does not depend on anybody, including Nigeria itself. And so what we have done in the last 21 years was to organize them so that we don't have anarchy in between. We've organized them in the formations in which that right can be exercised. And the constitutional force majeure is to declare an emergency, like every other contract. If extraordinary circumstances arise that make the performance of contract impossible, what has happened now in Nigeria, the parties can declare force majeure to suspend obligations under that contract. The Constitution of Nigeria is supposed to be the social contract. The original contract we had have been done away with, and our competitors in that contract have imposed Sharia, under which they are required to kill us.
Right.
And
so,
we can no longer be a union of equality. So the constitutional force majeure.
Yes.
The constitutional force majeure is to suspend obligations by these three. They are going after a period, they will give in notice. They will suspend obligation. They will reconsider their allegiance to this constitution. And that means suspending obligation under that social contract. The obligation of obedience to a constitution that requires their lives from them. That's what it is about.
Will this involve the governors of these alliance territories and their representatives at the National Assembly?
They will be invited. Their only status is that they belong to those territories. They will be invited. They've been told, they're hearing it like you're hearing it now, and they'll be invited for discussions, for consultations in their various places of origin. And some of them, of course, may want to say they are stronger than everybody else and refuse to come. But we know that the good majority of them, from the discussions that have been happening in the background, the ones that are reasonable will, of course, want to come home to their people, because how would their people treat their refusal to come